And so as we could see, it flipped negative, and then roughly around a year later, from when it flipped positive, around a year later, it flipped positive basically around mid-1989, and then it was during 1990, we saw a recession in the United States, and then we saw something similar around the year 2000. It flipped negative during 2000, and then near the end of 2000, beginning of 2001, it flipped positive, and obviously what came next was a major recession. That was the burst of the dot-com bubble, and we did actually see a slight little false signal here. So it is worth pointing out that, of course, we did see at least one false signal in 1998. So obviously it was a couple years later we ultimately saw a recession. It wasn't actually right after that signal right there, but ultimately, obviously, when it flipped extremely negative during the year 2000, that's when we saw the major recession just following that signal. And then it flipped negative again during around 2006, 2007. And then when it flipped positive, that was right around the middle of 2007, and less than a year later, pretty much, we started the 2008 crisis, the massive recession, the Great Recession. And then what's very interesting is this signal actually flashed before COVID even hit and predicted the COVID recession before COVID was even a thing, which is very interesting. But we saw this signal confirm around September 2019, so just before 2020. And then, of course, during 2020, basically in the first half of 2020, with the global shutdown, we did indeed see just a minor recession there for a few months. But as we could see here, over the last couple of years, we have seen the largest signal we have ever seen in this yield spread indicator. Obviously, it flipped extremely negative over the last couple of years. It reached a low point right here around mid-2023. And only just recently, from around near the end of last year, it just flipped positive again. And it's usually after it flips positive again, it's usually not long after that happens, that is when the major recession hits. And now, once again, we did see one false signal in 1998. So obviously it took a few years after that to actually see the next recession. But just keep this in mind. Obviously, it's only one signal, one chart. So don't rely everything just based on this one chart by itself. But it's definitely something to consider, considering how accurate it has been over the last 3 to 4 decades. And so let's just say I would not be surprised if we do end up seeing some sort of recession or downturn in the US economy or financial markets in general, potentially at some point within the next 1 year or so. Because as we can see here, this is actually a signal that has already been building for years now, and it's only recently just flipped positive, recently just activated that signal right here near the end of 2024. But with that being said, if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart today on the 4-day time frame, the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red. So not much has changed over the last 1 day on this chart. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, we're still technically seeing the bearish crossover playing out in the weekly Bitcoin MACD, as I've been saying every day for almost 2 months now. But as I've been saying more recently here on the channel, just over the last week, give or take, we are possibly approaching a low point in the histogram within the MACD indicator on the weekly Bitcoin price chart, which basically means we're potentially getting close towards confirming the maximum amount of bearish momentum within this bearish movement. So possibly, at least in this bearish movement right here, possibly the worst is behind us, but we still have to actually confirm that. But if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, we still have a significant bearish divergence on the weekly time frame that we cannot ignore, as I've been saying every day for around 2 to 3 months now. So once again, this means we should not be expecting any significant bullish momentum, at least anytime soon. So of course, we can see some short-term bullish price action, just not necessarily significant momentum towards the upside.